Hello there, and welcome back to the Brightworks and another match beyond all reason. A top-level match, in fact, as we've got some of the best going to be showing us exactly what they've got here on Pawn Retreat. Pawn Retreat, a pretty famous 1v1 map, but we also... Is this Pawn Retreat? Hold on, wait a second. Yeah, Pawn Retreat. Okay, just making sure. There's another map that looks very familiar to this. I can't remember the name right now, but anyway, Pawn Retreat, a very, very popular map for 1v1s, but we're seeing more and more 8v8s on them, which is pretty cool to see. Inda Club, going to be our blue team leader here today, spawning as an Armada commander right up in the middle of the front lines. Going to be playing into the low ground section, going to be going up against the Maroon commander Morley. Going to be an interesting matchup. So Inda Club with 60 open skill here, going to be going up against the 29 open skill Morley. Should put us in a bit of an interesting position. On the other side of the map, however, spawning in the backline here are the red Armada commander that goes by the name of Narnuk. 52 open skill, so whopping open skill values here showing up in this, and quite a difference between the tops and bottoms too. 18 open skill versus 60 and 52 open skill versus 22. There's definitely some high points and low points on these teams that it's gonna mean that there's some interesting imbalances between the way that this game should turn out. If the open skill values are to be believed, right? If that's the only thing that matters. Oftentimes it is not. This is a team game after all, so figuring out how to help your team is going to be relatively more important, but it is worth mentioning that some of the skill is in different spots around the map for both of these teams. Grand Monarch going to be playing in the backline over here, and I do want to point out that there's a bit of a difference between the way that these teams are playing this. So we have essentially a frontliner and a backliner here for the Maroon commander and the red commander Narnuk and Morley. And then we have Grand Monarch taking this section all alone. Versus, on this side, we don't have that same thing going on. Like, we basically have a 4v3 over here on the left-hand side. We have, let's see here, yeah, 4 commanders for the blue team. And then we have 3 commanders here, whoops. 3 commanders here for the red team. We have 1 commander into club going up against 2 commanders here in the middle. Should be interesting to see that. And then we have 3 commanders over here going up against basically 2 commanders, because Pyrotech is playing air. Means that this is going to be a weird matchup. So, that is to say that on every front right here, except for the midsection, except for the top tier player, the red team is taking inefficient trades. Like, they're going to be fighting uphill both ways. Well, you know, I guess Sad Panda, or pardon me, not Sad Panda, Leyline Leela, she's going to be playing in the air right now, so getting those shuriken out and whatnot. So I suppose that's closer to a 3v3 over here, but look at that. Already a tick finding some value here. Ooh, will get reclaimed. Nicely done by the brown commander. Aggression already on the other side of the map. We saw ticks running across, but it looks like most of it's been deflected here. A mech's here and a mech's there. We'll see another mech's taken down over here. Oh, self-D just a second too late on that metal extractor. I loved his self-D micro, but it was just a second too slow. And it will mean that that green tick gets away with murder in the backline. Timko Bob not able to save his metal extractor, and now this tick is going to be rushing into the backline to try and shut down whatever else it can. LLT comes up, though, to guard these metal extractors. Means that this constructor should be safe from any more harassment. Meanwhile, in the midsection of the map, we do have blitzes coming out here. It's very popular for commanders to go for incisors right now, so it's interesting to see Narnuk rushing into Armada tanks and putting blitzes on the field, as opposed to, for instance, going core and putting incisors out. Sad Panda going for that very classic Centurion push. Well, I say classic. It's pretty new revelation, right? I feel like Centurions are kind of coming into their own very recently. The Centurion push essentially revolving around having 1 or 2 Centurion out on the front line and then the commander to repair it. Recently has been looking completely unstoppable. The fact that you can keep that Centurion alive so effectively and you can use it to harass basically any type of unit, and also commanders are even vulnerable to it. Little pawn run by here. Yeah, trying to find the right way to deflect all this. Gonna try and push those forces into the powder blue force right here of Keox. There we go. LLT towers doing a great job. Or light laser towers. LLT towers, I guess that's a light laser tower. Doing a great job of defending there. Those pawns do go down. Interesting. So, Keox... What are you doing up there, buddy? Keox, the powder blue commander, has snuck his way all the way up onto the high ground over here. Interesting play right there from the Powder Blue Commander, trying to set up some LLTs right now, but could definitely go for the kill. I mean, you can imagine we could walk forward and D-gun down this LLT and the Constructor building it, and then suddenly Timko Bob is in a really vulnerable position, left with just a Constructor on this high ground, and it's basically an inch away from his base. Centurion coming out now with these pawns are ready to move. There they go. Yeah, they want to get the kill. We're just a second too late with the pull and the forces here. And it does mean that the pawns are going to be deflected as Timko Bob steps up to the plate. Trying to set up a beamer laser turret here to defend. Narnut keeping his Constructor alive on the front line here, probably hoping to go into some of that static defense, given that he's going up against a bot lab opponent. Whenever you're going up against someone that's purely bot lab, you know that you're going to be decent enough as is going for a little bit of static defense. Yeah, there's not really anything in the bot lab that you can do to outrange some of the heavier laser towers. There's rocket bots. They won't outrange them, but they will eventually build up to enough numbers to kill them. Centurion goes down. Red Commander looking for picks wherever they can. Not bad. Shuriken in the air here to paralyze some of these blitzes. But they're a little too slow for that Centurion to take advantage of it. Now the fighters in the air are cleaning him up so nicely. Just like that, a decent fighter trade as well. Very difficult to micro fighters into being, into properly trading out efficiently anyways. Always impressive whenever we see a commander pull it off. Morley, putting the pressure on. I love to see it. Kelsarikant, the the Lavender Commander, being very careful, right? Got to pronounce every syllable. Keeping the line in check, trying to... nice shutdown right there from those pawns. Trying to make sure that there's no more aggression coming through. We do have a Twin Guard up and running right now, and we also have the Rocketeers to try and reinforce it. Make sure that it pushes back any of the units that should step forward enough to try and blast it down. Karunal stepping forward as well. In range of that LLT. Uh-oh. Karunal definitely in a little bit of trouble. Morelli moving in for the D-gun, and boom goes the Twin Guard. Blasted to smithereens by the D-gun of Morelli. A nice little play right there from the Maroon Commander. Not only wasting the metal here of the Lavender Commander, but shutting down that tactical strategic building. Very nicely done. Karunal moving forward here too. Look at this tag team going on between the pink and Maroon Commanders. Karunal looking for that trade right here. Apparently going to try and self-D the commander in order to bring down Kelsarikant. Just like that. Both commanders, the hug of death. Embracing each other and falling to their doom. In this moment, a big old pawn run by is sanctioned. We've got 10 pawns making their way across the battlefield, quickly becoming 7. And rapidly falling from here. A little bit of friendly fire right there on that Rocketeer. That's alright, we don't have to report that to the authorities. A little bit of friendly fire is okay in a wartime effort. Was that enough value? I'm not entirely convinced. Those pawns managed to take down a couple of metal extractors, but ultimately not many. There is still one heading towards the base of the Tan Commander. We have an LLT coming up, though. Ticks to shut down all the aggression on the left-hand side, and it looks like, yeah, we're yielding. These Shuriken trying to shut down more and more of these ticks that have been pumped out right here. This is becoming a bad situation, made worse by the fact that there's only so many opportunity paths available here for the red team to take advantage of. Hounds coming out of the lab, the backline lab right here of the blue commander. No, pardon me, where did these come from? Where did these T2 units come from? They must have come from the green commander, I suppose. He's the only one with the T2 lab. Or maybe Indie Club had the T2 lab and ate it up to produce more T2 metal extractors. Either way, Hounds are going to be quite lovely for pushing back a bunch of this T1 force. Morelli, suffering greatly from the attack of the Hounds. But at the very least did manage to extract all that metal from those corpses. That's really what this entire fight was about. Maintaining presence on the map right here, not so important. Just making sure that we get that 2,500 metal out of those corpses is really what the Maroon Commander was interested in, and that metal has been long since extracted, so I do agree with this move to pull the Commander back and just go ahead and set yourself into a little bit of a better defensive position here. Eat up some of those T1 units. Make sure that they get their metal's worth. And eventually you're going to be just fine transitioning into T2. Shuriken here, paralyzing loads of these thugs, making it very, very easy for these ticks to fight them. Centurion as well should be blasting away. There we go. Laser beams finally connecting. And this army is now reduced to slag. This is the reason why these T1 armies are so risky. The later you go into the game, the more and more likely it is that the opposition is going to have some sort of force that can very efficiently shut down whatever you're going for, right? So this is exactly the sort of reason why you don't want to send those T1 units too far, because now there's 1,000 or so metal now directly into the palms of the Cyan commander, who's going to be more than happy to use that to go into T2, or to just pump out a massive amount of force and put it in the enemy backline. All that said, generally position-wise, the red team does feel like they have an advantage here. Centurion in mass right now for Timko Bob. That commander is looking well cooked. 58% on that yellow commander. The Centurion are coming in to save the day, stepping in front of their commander, trying to keep it alive. The commander, in turn, repairing the Centurion and making sure that they can push forward. Student of Teriyaki now marching forward as well, suffering the laser beam blast of those meatball boys. Oh, there he goes. Gets two of them with the D-gun. Ooh, gets a third with the D-gun as well. Nicely done right there by the Seafoam Green commander, shutting down those very expensive units. Timko Bob in a world of trouble now on the left-hand side. Screwish trying to fight multiple fronts at once. Sad Panda going up against the Tan commander Screwish here. Trying to apply pressure. We've got bots and we've got vehicles right now. And we've got T2 coming up on the back of it to boot. Pyrotech slowly transporting the commander around with these medium transports. Nicely done. This is a recent change to the game. They added the medium transports for both Armada and Cortex on Legion, technically. And essentially, they're the only thing that can lift up a commander. So, well, aside from heavy transport, heavy T2 transports can lift up a commander as well, obviously. Basically, the distinction is to make it a little bit harder to rush a transport. You can't really move the commander around as quickly. You can't get those transports up nearly as fast. And, of course, you can't really move the commander as quickly either. It's very, very slow, those T2 transport, T1.5 transports, those medium transports, they have a designation. I should just use that, huh? More and more hounds being pumped out at this point, sent up to the front line, and we do have enough to start pushing back the forces right now, yeah. Gonna start firing away into the distance. We need radar coverage or some sort of scout spam in order to make this really efficient. But either way, those hounds are more than happy to fire off into the distance. This is the Dragon's Maw pop-up turret. It's just waiting for these hounds to step within range. There we go. As soon as they do, it pops up and starts spewing flame, but it will go down rather quickly once it's in its popped-up form. And those hounds manage to tear apart that T1 static defense very, very efficiently. Not bad. Now I gotta wonder where the win condition is for the red team here, because they've had a wonderful positional advantage, but now it's time to step into T2, and I don't see any movements for big bombing runs, anything like that. It looks like we're still keeping it very standard in the air. We're just going for mass shuriken. We've got some siege units here as well, the rocket spiders, firing away to try and take down that pitbull, which they will. Static defenses are great until they're turned off. That is certainly one issue with them. Lighting tower here, protecting the Viking Narnak, trying to keep that red commander safe. It will be blasted down as well, but it served its duty in keeping that commander safe from the tick spam, and now Narnak is going to be forced to retreat from the front line, meaning, of course, that the rocket spiders can now move in once more. Recluses are deceptively dangerous. They fire a volley of 3 missiles, and when they connect, they will burst down basically any unit. They're one of the first units that Armada unlocks that really gives you huge bursty potential. They're relatively cheap, they are fairly disposable, and of course, they're wall climbers, so they can get up into certain areas that are otherwise fairly difficult to access. And Narnak losing the second pitbull that he was attempting right here. Weber's in the mix as well. Perfect for reclaiming a bunch of the wreckage that the Webers bring down. You can see that there. Pulling up hundreds and hundreds of metal into this composition, making the spider comp grow even further. It's kind of a weird self-perpetuating composition. It allows you to continue expanding as long as you're fighting on the front line. Hounds tearing apart the base right here of the Orange Commander. JTL loses it all in a massive push right here. It's mostly T1, and those Hounds are still alive, but those shuriken will paralyze them, and soon they will be cleaned up. This is a massive amount of damage right now for the orange commander. Will we be able to recover? Pyrotech sending the commander in to try and clean some of this up as well. And of course there are resbots to pick up these laps. And in fact, it does look like Karunal is going to try and get resbots into position. But already one of those thugs has blasted down the last of the wind turbines. And this is a tricky situation for JTL. Now, we still have the other half of the map. The orange commander not without any economy. He does have this backline economy over here. We also have this, the T2 mechs is coming up and online. Losing the T2 lab right here, it definitely hurts though. Oh, was that Pyrotech space? Oh, it might actually have been Pyrotech space. I'm looking at this and I'm like, why was the orange commander have so many bases? Pyrotech has 0 bases. It must have been Pyrotech space that actually got blasted down here. Boy, I need a cup of coffee apparently. It's early in the morning for me. Apparently I need to wake up a little bit more here. Orange commander, JTL, eating up the wreckage of these two commanders, lickety-split, trying to help out the yellow commander. These red spots, of course, can be used to resurrect that lab. That'd be awfully nice, and getting some, pardon me, constructors up and running would be wonderful as well. Don't see any wreckages here. Man, rocket spiders. The thing about rocket spiders is if you kite against them properly, they're really, really inaccurate. However, there is something to be said for the fact that if you have 1,000 of them, it's simply impossible to dodge all those missiles. There's just too many of them. Pitbull firing away at these rocket spiders, doing a great job, but just like I said, the burst potential on these spiders is massive, so if they fire in one concentrated volley, it's nearly impossible to keep any static defense repaired well enough that it doesn't get destroyed immediately. Weber's, of course, nice because they can paralyze these units, keeping them in place and making it much easier for the rocket spiders to hit them. Not necessarily the most useful thing in the world. Once you have enough rocket spiders, you don't really have to worry about it, whether or not you hit things. You just saturate that direction with rocket power, and eventually you'll bring something down. The spiders here, though, finding value basically everywhere, tearing down the static defenses all over the place, opening up lines for lower classes of units to sneak on through. I'm talking about ticks, I'm talking about pawns. When the LOTs go down, finally you have the opportunity to push on through. And this is the part of the game where those LOTs start to become relatively obsolete. Yeah, the Fiends want to engage here, but as soon as they do, the Webers are going to blast them down and turn them into static defenses. Little bricks of fire and fury out on the front line. Neither are really useful for the fact that those rocket spiders are firing away at a great distance. Oh, into club in a little bit of trouble here. Yeah, commander fairly exposed. We do have the radar and radar jammer bot, so at the very least we can detect kind of where that commander's presence is. Sort of. Maybe not. Oh, there's a jammer right here. Ah, cheeky. Into club standing just within range of his own jammer to make sure that there's no way that they can detect that commander. Very nicely done. And you know what? Despite that massive push over here on the left-hand side, Pyrotech is still playing air over here, so it must not have been Pyrotech space. I'm just confused. I'm confused why we've got a T2 lab over here, and I guess we've got T1 back here. I suppose it's worthwhile. I mean, if you have the T1 in the backline, then you may as well keep it around to produce resbots and the like, but I guess the T2 lab up on the front line is going to be where we produce the majority of our higher quality of forces. Rattlesnake firing away over here. Into club's main spider force. Marching away. Look at that. That is a ridiculously scary army. 1 million rocket spiders coming for you. The grand tick pull. Here they are. 1 million ticks to try and blast down the Maroon Commander. At the very least, they managed to take down some of the gunslingers here and provide wonderful vision for the commander to, of the commander rather, to be sniped right here by the rocket spiders. The other thing, of course, about this spider composition that I hadn't thought about before is that they're fairly resistant to EMP. Yeah, a lot of these units, the Weber and the Recluse, are really difficult to paralyze with Shuriken. It means that they're actually a decent counter to this Shuriken style that the pink commander's been going for here. These mass Shurikens aren't really going to hold much sway over these very, very EMP resistant rocket spiders. Maybe it means the difference. I'm not entirely sure. Rattlesnake set up here to harass back the units right now from the Tan Commander, trying to continue to push forward. Looks like our Seafoam Green Commander, Student of Teriyaki, got a little bit overzealous, pushed forward too far, got blasted down by the Pit Bulls and the LLTs and all the rest of it. Yeah, we've reached our Cortex mid-game, which is essentially Sheldon, Arbiter, and I'd like to see Sumo mixed in here as well, but we do have the Fiends. The Fiends sort of serve the same purpose, but they don't work as well as anti-spam protection. They're an excellent assault force, and they'll keep these units very clear, but oftentimes Sumos are the ones that you want. We do have loads of Grunts and Fiend, though. Grunt Fiend on its own is a very effective composition. They're all fast enough to keep up with each other, and of course the Grunts have a lighter laser, which means that they can take down things like Ticks or Pawns or other Grunts, things like that. Whereas you have something like the Fiend for really high concentrated damage, perfect for blasting through, for instance, medium tanks or any of the heavier static defenses that might pose trouble. When in combination with an Arbiter and Sheldon Ball, it's very difficult to stop. Definitely one of those compositions that has a really, really hard time being countered. Big old fighter clash over here. Taking the fighter trade just moments before the bombers do come across the map. And there we go. Those bombers now headed directly towards the backline, looking for any opportunity that they can. It's just T1 bombing, by the way. This is nothing fancy, nothing crazy. It's just good old-fashioned T1 whirlwind bombers. And they're more than effective enough. Yeah, look at that. Finding their way into the backline. This is a huge play right now. The Hot Pink Commander is making a run for the fusion reactors here of the Green Commander. One run, not enough to blast down those fusion reactors, but the bombers are doubling around and going to come back in order to finish the job. Bombs away, and the fusion reactors boom into the backline. Just like that, the entire energy economy for the Green Commander is collapsed. The last thing to do here to seal the deal is to just go ahead and blast down the lab. If you can bomb it down to smithereens, it means, of course, that no more air reinforcements are going to be coming up, at least not in a timely manner. And with those air forces shot down here, it does mean that this has been a wildly successful air raid. Bombers headed for the AGO now. Not necessarily dangerous. Not necessarily dangerous for its explosion. Holy, if I lose this. Not just necessarily dangerous for its explosive radius, but certainly an issue for the Blue Commander, losing that much energy production right now, just as the T3 comes up and online. The Marauder have finally made it out onto the front line, and just like that, the Blue Commander loses all that energy production that he was so crucially relying on. Going to need to set up a fusion reactor or two extra and try to get this back under control. T2 bot already heading over to try and replace that advanced Geo. The Green Commander trying desperately to get back into the game. Aphis Gaming, no bueno, apparently. Always the trick, trying to balance between scaling your economy and producing units for your team. That goes double for air players because, of course, very tricky to know how much air your opponent has and how much you have, and whether you'll even win the fight regardless. Lightning turrets cleaning up the ticks here nicely. The welders also blasting down some of these Marauder. A devastating loss for the Blue Commander. Of course, each and every one of those Marauder is precious. They're like ancient tech. They're very, very precious, and you can't afford to lose a single one, and 3 of them just went down right there to a bunch of T1 and T2 trash. Never a good situation to be in. We need anti-nukes here for the Orange Commander. Backline economy looking fairly thin. I mean, that is basically just T1 economy here. We do have a fusion reactor up and running over here, so at the very least that's turning out a nice amount of energy. Continuing to scale that economy wouldn't be the worst idea here. Scaling on 4 or 5 constructors is usually enough to keep your scaling going for instance, just a fusion reactor. We do have Sumos going now, which is cool to see. Always happy to see the Sumos. They function exactly the same as welders, where they're fairly slow, but they're extremely good against spam attacks. Means that they're very crucial to put in front of your army that essentially can't defend itself from spam otherwise. That would be Sheldons, that would be Hounds. All those units that struggle a lot against the spam. Spybot here revealing the static defenses over on this side and revealing the constructors building them as well. Oh, well, okay. That one stepped a little too close there. Spybot detects that constructor, and the constructor detects that Spybot. Marauder desperately looking for an opportunity to be useful here. They don't want to push into the Sheldon. They don't want to push into the static defenses. There really isn't a great angle for these Sheldon to, or these Marauder, pardon me, to engage. They're so desperately hoping to find the run by that brings them back into this game, but that bombing run was crucial to shutting down a massive part of the economy right here for the blue commander. Yeah, you can see trying desperately to get any kind of energy flowing back into the system here. Resurrects the advance, or the fusion reactor, pardon me, which does mean that eventually we're going to be able to start producing units again, but it has been a long time since fighter production has resumed. Luckily, the Seafoam Green Commander has started up fighter production, so there's some sort of air coverage here. One thing I could definitely recommend, if you've got the APM to spare for it, that is, when you get into the mid-game, late-game, consider putting down 4 construction turrets and an air lab and just start producing your own colloquial, or your own group of fighters. I don't know why colloquial came to mind, but produce your own group of fighters. What's the word for that? Your own mercenary group of fighters. Anyway, random word speak aside. Big old scout coming across over here. Uh-oh. That looks like a nuclear scout, if you ask me. Do we have a nuke charge up and ready? I don't see one. Yeah, no nukes charged here for the blue commanders. Maybe just scouting out where their opposition is. A bunch of these scout points in the backline will be difficult to shoot down, but eventually they're cleared out here. And the Sumos march forward with resilience. Looks like a spy bot detonated on the rattlesnake here, making this ever so nicer to push into. And the Sumos more than happy to blast down anything they can turn their snozzles towards. Man, Sumos are good. Absurdly tanky. High damage. What's not to love about these beautiful little trash cans waddling their way across the battlefield? Sharpshooter on the high ground has been doing some wonderful work here. Can't be sending the sharpshooters forward, though. Their value comes effectively, exclusively from being able to fire multiple times. Removing that advantage, and suddenly you've got basically nothing. Look at that. Sumo's completely overwhelming the front line here. Beautifully done. T3 lab is resumed. Production is back up and running, and we are starting up some aphises here, ready to step into that late game economy. Meanwhile, the Green Commander focused mainly on trying to get that aphis completed. We, of course, could go ahead and eat up the T1 Air Lab. We could eat up the fusion reactor. There's a lot of options for things that you can eat up here to finish off that aphis. But the Green Commander is a little bit distracted, I feel, by trying to recover. Left-hand side, looking a little bit dangerous. We do have some of these rocket trucks here firing away into the distance. Not necessarily the most devastating thing, though. Juno missile connects in the midsection here. We also have paralyzers coming up, which is always cool to see. Paralyzers are the Armada equivalent to the Catalyst tactical missile launcher for Cortex. Effectively, they fire a EMP missile, as you might expect. They have a big old EMP missile. Was that my Steam notifications? Oh. Sorry about that. I'm sorry to all the people who went and checked their Steam notifications just now. Not sure why I've got Steam notifications turned on all of a sudden. I've been battling my settings recently. You might have noticed a dip in quality from the last couple of videos. I'm working to resolve that. I'm not entirely sure what happened. Quite literally nothing changed, but apparently all the settings are different. Or something, I'm not entirely sure. Anywho. Resbots eating up wreckages, Weber's blasting them down. Pit bulls for the defense. Lovely stuff. The defensive pork right here from the red team is unparalleled. Their defensive setup is going to be very difficult to break. We've got the landmines, we've got the pulsar tachyon accelerator, we've got all sorts of static defenses here just waiting to get engaged against any of the army over here that does show its face. Sharpshooters coming out here as well are going to be quite difficult to deal with. Yeah, these pulsar, look at these pulsars staring at each other. Just barely out of each other's range, but staring at each other so badly, wanting to fire. One day. One day you'll get your opportunity. Arbiter taking down the rattlesnake. Very nicely done. We can also take down the pitbull over here. I believe that was in range as well. Not the end of the world, but certainly does mean that the defenses are softened ever so slightly. Prepare bombers for mid, guys. Soon. I like this transition right here from the Seafoam Green Commander. Student of Teriyaki doing a great job of pivoting into the air roll here, recognizing that the Green Commander was knocked out, and now we're pulling over to try and cover for the Commander here. Potato trying desperately to claw themselves back into this game with a load of E-converters, but we're way overbuilding them here. You can see we're not actually able to E-convert any of this. No E-conversion is happening right now for the Green Commanders, so we're way overbuilding these. We need to build aphises or fusion reactors or something like that. Bombers are going to be the most important thing, though, because ending the game is better than building more economy, right? Spybot detects the sharpshooters over here. It's actually a massive find. Nice EMP right there. Catches half of those sharpshooter at the very least. Going to make it a little bit harder for those sharpshooter to defend against the massive wall of mammoth now marching forward. it feels like JTL saw the sumo work and said, hey, you know what? I'll do you one better. How about an even thicker unit? And the mammoth was born. Nice Spybots right there, though. Spybots connecting in a big way against those mammoths, shutting off the circuitry systems right there from all of those heavy warbots, heavily armored assault bots. 5% HP remaining, and those sharpshooters are blasting them down relatively quickly. Spybots are great, though. Yeah, the Spybots here are phenomenal for paralyzing all this. Really, really lovely stuff. Buying the time that these sharpshooters need in order to complete their good work. One of the Spybots over here was shut down, though. Yeah, the ghost debris. Meanwhile, the trigger is pulled. EMP missiles are launched. And the front lines are overwhelmed. Paralyzer missiles apparently having more than enough of an effect. The Marauder blasting through this midsection of the map, tearing apart all these static defenses very swiftly. Ooh, brutal pull right there. Man, I love the EMP missiles. Opening up an opportunity for the blue commander to actually push through here. I'm surprised to see that we're not sending these forward. It's just a bunch of T1 to defend. Maybe a little bit wary of the commander in position right now. Narnuk, yeah, moving into spec to try and shuttle this down, but those Marauder are avoiding that commander as best they can. D-gun is launched and it catches 1, 2, maybe 3 of them. There we go. Marauder making through the backline with the help of some paralyzer missiles, managing to break through the very heavily fortified midsection of this map and go directly towards the backline. All the pitbulls in the world aren't going to save you right now, as suddenly these Marauder have popped up in your backline with your Aphis. Love to see some splitties here. No such thing, though, and the red commander loses it all to the force of Marauder that the blue commander's been building up for quite some time. A brilliant push right through the midsection of the map right here, knocking Narnuk essentially out of this game. We do have a couple of rogue constructors here left over to try and rebuild, and we do also have the beamer turrets, which are lovely for shutting down their spam right now, putting in some serious work. Never undercredit how much work the beamers are doing here, shutting off all these pawns before they really have an option to get into the base right now. This is why you need the sumo. Those cyan sharpshooters without any sort of spam protection, losing it all right there. Suddenly the Admiral finding himself in a really tricky situation. What a wall over here. We've got the wall of E-converters. They're sort of like a poor man's landmine, right? They're more expensive than a landmine, I do believe. But they are, you know, fairly cheap to set up, and there's a lot of units that can build them that are quite useful. Here we go. Welders coming out in mass to finally deal with all this spam. This is what we needed in front of the sharpshooters, but unfortunately the sharpshooters just didn't have the cover from those lightning sluggers, and just like this. Suddenly, hundreds of units pulled across the battlefield here directly into the face of the Cyan commander. For the time being, though, it is held. The welders are extremely adept at shutting down big swarms of units. Their chain lightning attack makes them very effective because essentially they don't miss. Yeah, there's no inaccuracy penalty here for the welders. They sort of always hit their target, which means that whenever they get engaged against a big swarm of units, they're going to have 100% efficiency, if not more. There's those catalysts headed out. EMP missiles connecting with the backline right here, shutting down the rattlesnake and some of the backline units. Maybe hoping to catch a big ball of these hounds, though. Probably the primary target right here. We do have more missiles, though, so we can obviously launch them again. Paralyzing this big group of units right now would be massive. Well, we have the missiles. We have the missiles. Club not firing the missiles away at the hounds right here. Apparently not going to matter, though, as the heavy bombers come in to try and shut all this down. Doing a decent job of blasting down a whole bunch of these units. Razorback now out and available. We need to worry about that. Yeah, that Razorback is definitely trouble. Pulsar are going to be charged with dealing with the Razorback there. Oh my goodness, almost killing it in a single blast right now. A brutal connection right there against that Razorback from the Pulsar. It will eventually go down. Units from the right-hand side pulled over here to try and do a little bit of damage, but the deflection from the Marauder has been quite nice. I'm so surprised to see that we haven't gone into anything higher tech, like Vanguard or Razorbacks or even Titans. Just going for pure Marauder. Interesting. Apparently Club valuing that mobility above everything else. Love to see the Red Commander rebuilding back into this game, by the way. Trying to set up some more build power, get those mexes up and running. We've got the AGO still pumping out energy. Narnek's commander, well, not original commander, but the make-do commander, resurrected right here and going to be setting up on the front line. We do have a T1 bot lab as well, and we're going to be trying to resurrect as much of this as possible. Semi-stalemate over here on the left-hand side. We do have some of those resurrected Marauder trying to find some value, and they do. They pop a advanced metal extractor right there. Pulsar managing to kill one of those Marauder, though, and trying to snipe the other here in the distance. Whoa. Not quite. Close, but not quite. This Pulsar has killed 2 Razorbacks now. At this point, you've got to start considering ways to shut that down, because the Razorbacks dying is not efficient enough to continue forward. Juno missiles wouldn't be the worst thing either. The Brown Commander spamming out massive amounts of pawns and ticks, trying to flood the battlefield with as much as possible. There we go. Juno missile does connect over here, actually, and it will shut down at least 3 of those streams of ticks. However, one of them still remains. Oh, maybe not, actually. 2 of those streams of ticks. Every time that Pulsar wastes a shot on a tick, it is wasting valuable energy. Yeah, need some sort of solution to the spam coming out here. Vanguard on the high ground. Now, Vanguard did get their range increased recently. They are now a beautiful anti-siege weapon. As you can see by this guy hanging out on this hillside right now, able to fire away well into the distance. EMP missile fired out towards that Pulsar over there. Does connect against those static defenses, which is always quite nice. There's more than enough static defenses to keep things up and running here, though. There we go. EMP missiles on both sides. Man, look at the EMP missile use. We never see EMP missiles, and then suddenly this game, they're all the rage. So cool to see. I love the EMP missiles. I feel like I never find a way to effectively use the EMP missiles, and it's such a bummer. Shiva shooting themselves in the face with their rockets. My goodness. But at the very least, with those EMP missiles connecting, the Pulsar will go down without a fight. Screaming with EMP launchers, that's right. They could have saved the day here. They only paralyzed the Shiva, now waddling towards the main base over here. Paralyzing the entire economy of the Blue Commander, though. That's pretty annoying. That is really, really annoying. The Blue Commander suddenly left entirely without power. Is the Shiva push strong enough to break through here? To my eyes, it does sure look that way. Shiva firing away their assault missiles, trying to blast down any of these static units that they can. Bombers connecting with the LRPC here. It's a bold sacrifice, but it does shut down that long-range plasma cannon and prevent any future damage right there. Fusion reactor went down, but all said and done, that was a lot of death and destruction for not ultimately very much effective damage. Tick's running forward here now, though. I do like the tick spam. Obviously very potent to have these ticks spamming away over here. Shiva, and more importantly their missiles, able to do a lot of damage to these units up on the high ground that otherwise would be quite a bit of trouble to try and deal with. EMP missile against an EMP missile right there. It's a dog-eat-dog world, or in this case an EMP-eat-EMP world, trying to keep each other paralyzed completely in order for these units to connect. My goodness, the EMP missiles are juicy. I don't think we've ever seen these starbursts connect in such a juicy manner right here. This is wonderful. Shiva getting a decent engagement here against the Hounds over on the left-hand side. These are the green Shiva of Sad Panda going up against the Hounds of Grand Monarch, the brown Hounds of Grand Monarch. I wish there was some sort of spam behind this in order to push forward here. We do have the pawns running forward. It'd be nice if we had ticks, or, well, I guess with too many Junos on the map now. Yeah, I think the pawns are probably your best bet. Feeling so congested today. You guys hear it in my voice? Trying to drink water to open my sinuses up. Doesn't feel good. I hope I'm not getting sick. With the Mammoth rolling forward, and more importantly the Thor stepping forward here as well, suddenly this side became a lot more dangerous. And indeed, the big bundle of Marauder that had been saved up over time right now finally pushes forward. Brown makes most relevant play of the game. The Brown commander losing all of his units to the Aphis explosion, but at the very least bringing down the Aphises nonetheless of the powder blue commander Keox on the left-hand side. Not a bad connection right there, not a bad connection at all. We do need to see some more aggression through that side of the map, though. Despite blasting apart the red base, despite doing so much damage in the midsection, over here on the left-hand side is where we're really seeing the most value. Atomic bombers connecting in as many a way as possible. Yeah, trying to blast these down without killing their own Aphis. Oh, it's a tricky game. Gunship's a little bit more of a, a little bit more of a refined approach to blasting those down, as opposed to the thermonuclear approach. So much anti-air available for the red team on the left-hand side. They've gone for a massive amount of just regular static anti-air defenses. It means that any subsequent bombing runs are going to be nearly impossible. You're going to need a huge amount of bombers in order to pull it off. Razorbacks colliding on this front here. They managed to hold this quite nicely, and those Vanguard firing off into the distance hurt quite a lot as well. Yeah, we're going up to quite substantial Vanguard numbers. We're up to 5 already. I like it a lot. Vanguard's one of those units that can snowball really, really easily. Once you get more than a couple of those Vanguards up and running, there's not really any static defense that can do much against it. You're sort of just in a great position. Commander reclaimed right there. Oh, those are the res bots of the Tan Commander, actually. Okay, so this is great. Yeah, reclaiming a whole bunch of this wreckage before the blue team has a chance to. Not bad whatsoever, then. Bombers connecting. Whoa, connecting in a big way with this massive horde of Sheldon. Nicely done with those heavy bombers. Doing a wonderful job strafing across the edge of these Sheldon. Thinning out those numbers quite significantly. Shutting down that snowball very nicely, to say the least. Razorbacks pushing forward right here. Yeah, not really a favorable engagement for them. The Vanguard firing away are much better, and I think I like that play. Just keep the Vanguard firing and allowing them to shell away at everything in the distance while the Razorback just protect the Vanguard from being attacked. Not bad at all. There go those Vanguard. Connecting with the Shiva here. Catapult on the high ground, doing a lovely job of firing away into the distance. Oh, don't overstep, though. Don't overstep with those Vanguard. They really are brutal. We have so many of them at this point. It's starting to become a very brutal mess. Shiva really struggling against this swarm of units here. Mostly shooting themselves. Look at that guy doing a 360 no-scope. Gunships in the air. Like they just don't care. Gunships for defense, always a viable option. The Wasp gunship is probably one of the most versatile gunships in the game. Relatively cheap, fairly mobile, does a big AoE damage, but also does a decent enough burst of single target damage that they're effective in swarms. They're definitely one of the better units of all time. The Vanguard firing away here, finding value. Trying to get a behemoth on the field, and we are close to it. 20,000 metal for this barely mobile heavy turret. Big EMP missiles. Massive EMP missiles over here on the midsection of the map as the Thors now roll forward. Immune to the effects of the EMP. All those paralyzer missiles are worth nothing in the face of the Thor. Its electrical systems redoubled and redoubled again, making sure that it's redundantly covered against EMP strike. And of course packing EMP missiles into its ears as well. Down goes the Maroon Commander, or the Red Commander. Trying to degun as many of this as possible, but not finding much value in it. Those Thors are now rolling forward. EMP plunged into the backline to try and take this down. Once again, Mass Thor making a huge push. Likewise, over here on the right-hand side, the Green Thors pushing forward into this base, and with that, Behemoth shut down mere moments from coming out of the lab right here. These Thors are going to be waddling their way, washing their way across the face of the Orange team and the Orange Commander, blasting apart the Aphises here, my goodness. Just like that, the Red Commander goes down, and the towels start to be thrown. Vanguard now blasting apart the static defenses. Thors rolling seamlessly into the backline here with essentially no counter. The Thors are having a grand old time making their way towards the backline, towards the central economy right here of everybody in the red team. Yep. One decisive play, just like that. We had a beautiful push on the left-hand side. This Marauder almost finding enough value to close this game out, but just barely not managing to. And with a couple of Thor built and pushed right through the weakest section of the map right there, using those EMP missiles to make it the weakest section of the map, the blue team manages to take the win in this very long game of Beyond All Reason. I guess it's only 46 minutes, where usually games go about 40, but I guess I'm used to them lingering closer to 20 nowadays. I guess everybody's getting a little bit better. Anyways, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you again in the very next cast of Beyond All Reason. Peace out, everybody.